The golden light of a setting sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Roswell, New Mexico territory, when a small boy with tear-streaked cheeks and tattered clothes tugged at the sleeve of a tall, weary-looking cowboy. "Sir, can you bury my sister?" the boy asked, his voice barely a whisper against the evening breeze. Yates Mackenzie looked down at the child, whose innocent face carried a burden no young soul should ever have to bear, and in that moment, his life changed forever. It was 1876, and Yates had ridden into town that afternoon with no intention of staying longer than it took to replenish his supplies, and perhaps enjoy a warm meal and a glass of whiskey before continuing his journey west. At 32, he'd spent most of his adult life drifting from one cattle operation to another, never setting down roots, never looking back. The war had taken much from him, not just years of his youth, but his belief in permanence. Everything good could be stripped away in an instant. Yates had learned that lesson the hard way. "Your sister?" Yates asked, crouching down to meet the boy's eyes. They were hazel, flecked with gold, and brimming with both courage and despair. "Where is she, son?" "In our wagon," the child answered, pointing toward the edge of town where a broken-down Conestoga sat tilted in the dirt. "Ma's there too, but she's been asleep for 3 days now. She won't wake up neither." Yates felt his heart sink. He'd seen enough death to recognize it in the boy's description. "What's your name?" "Samuel," the boy said. "Samuel Parker. I'm 8 years old." "I'm Yates Mackenzie," the cowboy replied, straightening up and adjusting his well-worn hat. "Let me see about your family, Samuel." Together they walked to the abandoned wagon, the child's small hand finding its way into Yates's rough, calloused palm. The scene that greeted them was grim. A woman lay still beneath a tattered quilt, her face peaceful, but bearing the unmistakable pallor of death. Beside her was a small girl, no more than 6, her blonde curls framing a face that looked as though she might simply be sleeping. "Typhoid," Yates murmured, recognizing the signs. "How long have you been alone out here, Samuel?" "Since yesterday morning," the boy answered. "That's when Ma stopped talking to me. Ellie went to sleep the day before." Yates removed his hat, holding it against his chest as he surveyed the tragic scene. "Where's your pa?" "He died in the mines last year. Ma said we were going to California to live with her sister." Samuel's voice was oddly steady, as though he'd already cried all the tears his small body could produce. "You've been very brave," Yates said softly. "I'll help you bury them proper, and then we'll figure out what's next for you." That evening, Yates Mackenzie dug 2 graves on a gentle slope overlooking the town. The local minister came to say a few words as the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Samuel stood silently, clutching a small rag doll that had belonged to his sister. After the brief ceremony, the minister, a kindly older man named Reverend Thomas, approached Yates. "The boy has no other family that we know of," he said quietly. "The town has no orphanage. I suppose we could take up a collection and send him east on the next train." Yates looked at Samuel, standing alone by the fresh graves. Something stirred in him, a feeling he thought had died long ago during the war. "That won't be necessary, Reverend," he heard himself say. "The boy will stay with me." "You, Mr. Mackenzie? Forgive me, but you're a drifter, are you not? How will you care for a child?" Yates straightened his shoulders. "I suppose I'll have to stop drifting." That night, Yates and Samuel stayed at the town's only hotel. The boy was quiet, answering questions when asked, but offering little else. He ate the food placed before him mechanically, his eyes distant. "I've been thinking," Yates said as he helped the boy into the oversized hotel bed. "I know a ranch about 3 days' ride from here. Good people. I worked there a few years back. They might be hiring." "Would I go with you?" Samuel asked, the first sign of interest he'd shown since their meeting. "Yes, you would, if you want to." Yates sat on the edge of the bed. "I can't replace your family, Samuel. I won't try to, but I can give you a home, keep you safe. Would that be all right?" Samuel nodded, then hesitated. "Can I call you Yates, or should I call you Pa?" The question caught Yates off guard. "How about you just call me Yates for now, and we'll see where the trail takes us." Samuel seemed to accept this, settling back against the pillow. "Yates?" "Yes, Samuel? Thank you for burying my sister." Yates felt a lump in his throat. "You're welcome, Samuel. Now get some sleep. We've got a long journey ahead." The next morning, Yates used what little money he had to purchase supplies for their journey: food, a small blanket for Samuel, and a pony gentle enough for a boy to ride. He sold the broken-down wagon for scrap and packed what few possessions the family had: a Bible, a few items of clothing, and a small box containing a locket with a portrait of Samuel's parents. As they prepared to leave Roswell behind, Yates felt an unexpected sense of purpose. He'd been wandering for so long, haunted by memories of the war and the family he'd lost in its aftermath. Now, looking at the small boy adjusting to his new pony, Yates wondered if perhaps they could heal each other. Their journey took them northeast, across the rugged terrain of the New Mexico territory. Yates taught Samuel how to ride properly, how to set up camp, and how to read the stars at night. The boy proved to be a quick learner, his grief momentarily forgotten in the excitement of these new experiences. On their third day of travel, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they crested a ridge, and Yates pointed to a sprawling ranch nestled in the valley below. "There it is," he said, "the Triple N Ranch." "It's big," Samuel remarked, shading his eyes against the glare. 5,000 acres, Yates confirmed. Good grazing land. The Nolan family has owned it for 3 generations. They rode down into the valley, approaching the main house, a substantial 2-story structure surrounded by barns, corrals, and bunkhouses. As they drew near, a woman emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical bun, but a few tendrils had escaped to frame a face that was both beautiful and strong. "Yates Mackenzie," she called out, recognition and surprise evident in her voice. "I never thought I'd see you ride back this way." "Hello, Clara," Yates replied, removing his hat as they came to a stop in front of the house. "It's been a while." Clara Nolan stepped down from the porch, her green eyes taking in the sight of Samuel. "And who might this be?" "This is Samuel Parker," Yates said, helping the boy down from his pony. "Samuel, this is Miss Clara Nolan. Her family owns this ranch." "Madam," Samuel said politely, though he shifted closer to Yates. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Samuel," Clara said warmly, before turning her attention back to Yates. "I suspect there's quite a story here." "There is," Yates confirmed. "I was hoping to speak with your father. Is he around?" A shadow crossed Clara's face. "Pa passed last winter. Pneumonia took him." "I'm sorry to hear that, Clara. He was a good man." "The best," she agreed. "I'm running things now, along with my brother Daniel when he's not off on cattle drives." She glanced at Samuel again, then back to Yates. "But come inside. You both look like you could use a hot meal, and then you can tell me what brings you back to the Triple N." Inside the spacious ranch house, Clara served them a hearty supper of beef stew and fresh bread. Samuel ate hungrily, some color returning to his pale cheeks. As the boy's eyelids began to droop, Clara showed him to a guest room, leaving Yates alone at the kitchen table. When she returned, she poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from him. "Now, tell me everything." Yates recounted his chance meeting with Samuel, the boy's tragic circumstances, and his impulsive decision to take the child under his wing. Clara listened without interruption, her expressive face reflecting compassion for the orphaned boy, and, Yates thought, perhaps a new assessment of the man before her. "So," he concluded, "I was hoping there might be work here. I know I left rather abruptly 3 years ago." "After I turned down your proposal," Clara interjected. Yates nodded, a flush creeping up his neck. "Yes, well, water under the bridge. But I need to give Samuel stability, and I've always respected the Triple N. Your father ran a good operation." Clara studied him for a moment. "We could use another experienced hand," she admitted, "especially one who knows the ranch already. But Yates, are you sure about this? Taking on a child is a tremendous responsibility. I've never been more sure of anything, Yates said firmly. Samuel needs me, and maybe I need him too. Clara's expression softened. The war changed you, Yates. When you came here before, you were so closed off, so determined to keep moving. I couldn't say yes to a man who wouldn't or couldn't put down roots. I understand that now, Yates said quietly. I was running from ghosts. Still am in some ways. But Samuel deserves better than that, and I aim to give it to him. Then welcome back to the Triple N, Clara said, extending her hand across the table. For both of you. The following days established a new rhythm for Yates and Samuel. They moved into a small cabin on the ranch property, which had previously housed the foreman before he married, and built a place of his own. Clara helped them settle in, providing linens, cookware, and other necessities that neither bachelor had thought to acquire. Samuel shadowed Yates during the day, learning the routines of ranch life. He proved to have a natural affinity for horses, and the ranch hands took a liking to the quiet, earnest boy. At Clara's insistence, arrangements were made for Samuel to attend the small school in the nearby town once the fall term began. As spring turned to summer, the Triple N bustled with activity. Cattle needed to be moved to higher pastures, fences required mending, and preparations for the fall roundup kept everyone busy from dawn until dusk. Through it all, Clara Nolan managed the operation with a firm but fair hand, earning the respect of every man on her payroll, and increasingly, Yates noticed, his admiration. One evening in late July, as Yates sat on the porch of their cabin repairing a bridle, Samuel approached with an unusually contemplative expression. "What's on your mind, partner?" Yates asked, setting aside his work. Samuel climbed onto the bench beside him. "Miss Clara is nice," he said. "Yes, she is," Yates agreed, wondering where this was heading. "Do you like her?" The directness of childhood cut straight to the heart of the matter. Yates cleared his throat. "Miss Clara is our employer, Samuel, and a fine rancher. Ma said that when a man and woman like each other, they get married." Samuel kicked his legs against the bench, like in the Bible stories. "It's a bit more complicated than that," Yates said, unsure how to navigate this conversation. "She looks at you sometimes," Samuel continued, "when you're not watching. Like how Ma used to look at Pa's picture after he died." Yates felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. "Does she now?" "Mm-hmm." Samuel hopped down from the bench. "I'm going to check on my rabbit." He darted off toward the small hutch Yates had built for the orphaned cottontail Samuel had rescued. Left alone with his thoughts, Yates pondered the boy's observations. It was true that he and Clara had developed a comfortable rapport over the past months. Their previous history, his hasty proposal and her rejection, seemed to have faded into a mutual understanding. They often found themselves working together, discussing ranch operations, or simply sharing a cup of coffee while watching Samuel play. But was there more to it? Yates hadn't allowed himself to consider the possibility. His focus had been on providing stability for Samuel and proving his worth to the Triple N. Yet now, with Samuel's innocent remarks echoing in his mind, Yates couldn't help but wonder. The opportunity to explore these thoughts came sooner than expected. The next afternoon, as Yates was training a young horse in the corral, Clara approached on foot carrying a canteen of water. "That colt's coming along nicely," she observed, handing him the canteen through the rails. "You always did have a way with the difficult ones." Yates took a long drink. "He just needs patience and consistency. Same as people, I reckon." Clara smiled, leaning against the fence. "Speaking of which, you've done wonders with Samuel. He's a different child from the one who arrived here." "He's resilient," Yates said, pride evident in his voice. "And having a place to belong, people who care about him, it's made all the difference." "People like you," Clara said softly. "And you," Yates added. "He thinks the world of you, Clara." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the snorting of the colt as Yates returned to his work. After a few minutes, Clara spoke again. "There's a social at the church on Saturday. The whole county will be there." She hesitated. "I thought perhaps you and Samuel might like to attend." Yates led the colt to the center of the corral before responding. A social? Dancing and such? And such, Clara confirmed with a hint of amusement. Samuel might enjoy meeting other children before school starts. And you... She trailed off. And me? Yates prompted, turning to face her. You might enjoy an evening away from ranch work, she finished, though her eyes suggested there was more she wasn't saying. Then we accept, Yates said, surprising himself with his enthusiasm. Though I should warn you, my dancing hasn't improved since the last time. Clara laughed, a bright sound that reminded Yates of spring water over stones. I'll risk it, she said, then turned to leave. Wear your good shirt, Mackenzie. Yes, madam, he called after her, watching as she walked back toward the main house, her skirts swaying with each confident step. Saturday arrived with clear skies and a palpable excitement from Samuel, who had never attended a proper social event. Yates trimmed the boy's hair, helped him into his best clothes purchased on a trip to town earlier in the week, and made sure his own appearance was presentable. Do I look all right? Samuel asked anxiously, smoothing down his new shirt. Handsomest young man in the territory, Yates assured him. The girls won't know what hit them. Samuel wrinkled his nose. Girls are silly. Yates chuckled. You might change your mind about that someday. They hitched the wagon and drove to the small white church at the edge of town. The grounds were already bustling with activity tables laden with food, a makeshift dance floor constructed of wooden planks, and a small band tuning their instruments. Clara found them soon after they arrived, looking radiant in a blue dress that complemented her eyes. You both clean up rather well, she commented, adjusting Samuel's collar. I believe Mrs. Wilson's grandson is about your age, Samuel. Would you like to meet him? As Clara led Samuel to meet the other children, Yates found himself engaged in conversation with neighboring ranchers. The evening progressed pleasantly good food, lively music, and a sense of community that Yates had forgotten existed in his years of drifting. When the band struck up a waltz, Clara appeared at his side. I believe you owe me a dance, Mr. Mackenzie. I don't recall agreeing to that, Yates protested weakly, but he was already allowing her to lead him toward the dance floor. Consider it a condition of your employment, she quipped, placing her hand in his. As they moved across the floor, Yates was acutely aware of Clara's proximity, the scent of lavender in her hair, the warmth of her hand in his, the graceful way she followed his lead despite his occasional misstep. You're thinking too much, she murmured. Just feel the music. Yates relaxed slightly. I've always been better with horses than with dancing. Yet here you are, Clara said, looking up at him with a smile that made his heart skip a beat, taking on new challenges. Some challenges are worth facing, Yates replied, holding her gaze. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Then Samuel came bounding up, excited to show Yates a marble he'd won in a game with the other boys, and the spell was broken. But as the evening continued, Yates found himself seeking Clara's company again and again, each interaction deepening his appreciation for her intelligence, her strength, and her gentle heart. As summer yielded to autumn, life at the Triple N settled into a comfortable routine. Samuel started school, riding in each morning with Clara, who had business to attend to in town several times a week. Yates threw himself into ranch work, earning the position of foreman when the previous one decided to move further west. The days grew shorter, the nights cooler, and preparations for winter became the primary focus of ranch operations. Through it all, Yates and Clara found themselves drawn together, discussing ranch business, sharing meals, watching Samuel grow and thrive under their joint care. One crisp October afternoon, Clara invited Yates and Samuel to Sunday dinner at the main house. After the meal, while Samuel helped Clara's housekeeper with the dishes, Clara suggested a walk. They strolled through the orchard behind the house, the trees heavy with late apples. Clara wore a shawl against the autumn chill, her breath visible in the cooling air. I've been thinking, she said after they had walked in companionable silence for several minutes, about the future of the Triple N. It's a fine operation, Yates commented. You've done an impressive job since taking over. Clara nodded, accepting the compliment. But it's a lot for one person. and with Daniel more interested in the open range than in ranching. Yates waited, sensing there was more she wanted to say. "I've been offered a partnership," she continued, "from the Blackburn outfit to the east. A merger of sorts." Yates felt a sudden tightness in his chest. "I see. That would be advantageous, I suppose. From a business perspective, perhaps." Clara stopped walking, turning to face him. "But it would come with conditions, personal ones." Understanding dawned on Yates. "Thomas Blackburn has been courting you." "He's made his intentions clear," Clara confirmed. "He's a decent man, a successful rancher. It would be a sensible match." "Sensible," Yates repeated, the word tasting bitter in his mouth. "And is that what you want, Clara? A sensible match?" Clara's eyes searched his face. "What I want," she said slowly, "is to build something that will last. A legacy. A family." She took a deep breath. "What I want, Yates Mackenzie, is what I've always wanted. A man who sees me as a partner, not just a rancher or a woman to be protected. A man who isn't afraid to put down roots and face the future, whatever it may bring." "A man like me?" Yates asked, hardly daring to hope. 3 years ago, no, Clara admitted. But now? The way you've committed to Samuel, to the ranch, to building a life here. Yes, Yates, a man exactly like you. Yates took her hands in his heart pounding. "Clara, I'm not the same man who proposed to you before. That man was still running from his past. But Samuel has taught me that we can't outrun grief, we have to face it, move through it, and find joy on the other side." "And have you?" Clara asked softly. "Found joy?" "Every day," Yates answered, his voice rough with emotion. "With Samuel, and with you, Clara. If you'll have me." In response, Clara rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Yates pulled her closer. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I'll take that as a yes," Yates murmured. "It's a yes," Clara confirmed with a smile that lit up her entire face. "But we should probably consult Samuel. I wouldn't want to impose on your arrangement." "He already thinks the world of you," Yates assured her, "though he might have some conditions of his own. He's been asking for a dog." Clara laughed, linking her arm through his as they turned back toward the house. "I believe that can be arranged." They found Samuel in the kitchen, helping to dry the last of the dishes. When Yates and Clara shared their news, the boy's face broke into a wide grin. "I knew it," he exclaimed. "I told you she looks at you special." Clara blushed and Yates chuckled. "So you did, partner. How do you feel about making our family official? Would you like Clara to be your ma?" Samuel considered this seriously for a moment. "Would we live in the big house?" "Yes," Clara answered. "There's plenty of room for all of us." "And could I get that dog we talked about?" Yates exchanged an amused glance with Clara. "I think that could be arranged," Samuel nodded solemnly. "Then I think it's a good idea. But can I still call you Yates? I remember my pa real good, and it feels strange to call somebody else pa." Yates knelt down to meet the boy's eyes. "You can call me whatever feels right to you, Samuel. I'm not trying to replace your pa. I just want to be family to you in whatever way you need." Samuel threw his arms around Yates's neck. "We're already family," he said with the simple certainty of childhood. Over the boy's shoulder, Yates met Clara's gaze. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but her smile was radiant. In that moment, Yates knew that the journey that had begun with a small boy's tragic request had led him exactly where he was meant to be. The wedding took place in late November, a simple ceremony at the same church where they had danced at the social. The entire community turned out to witness the union of Clara Nolan and Yates Mackenzie, with Samuel standing proudly as Yates's best man, clutching the ring with solemn responsibility. After exchanging their vows, Yates, Clara, and Samuel stood together at the altar while the minister offered a special blessing for their new family. As they walked back down the aisle, Yates with Clara on one arm and his other hand on Samuel's shoulder, he felt a sense of completion he had never thought possible. The reception at the Triple Inn was a joyous affair, with food and dancing lasting well into the evening. When the last guest had departed, Yates found Samuel sitting on the porch steps, playing with his new puppy, a wedding gift from Clara's brother Daniel. "Tired, partner?" Yates asked, sitting beside him. Samuel nodded, leaning against Yates's side. "But happy. Are you happy, Yates?" "Happier than I ever thought I could be again," Yates answered honestly. "Me too," Samuel said, petting the puppy's soft fur. "I miss Ma and Ellie sometimes, and Pa, even though I was little when he died. But I'm glad we're a family now." Yates put his arm around the boy's shoulders. "So am I, Samuel. So am I." Clara joined them on the porch, having changed from her wedding dress into a simpler gown. "Room for one more?" she asked. Samuel scooted over, making space between himself and Yates. Clara sat down, and the three of them gazed up at the star-filled sky. The puppy curled contentedly in Samuel's lap. "Make a wish," Clara suggested as a shooting star streaked across the darkness. Yates didn't need to wish for anything. Everything he wanted was right here beside him. As winter settled over the Triple N, the newly formed family established their routines and traditions. Samuel continued his schooling, excelling in his studies and making friends in the community. Yates managed the day-to-day operations of the ranch, while Clara handled the business aspects and correspondence. Together, they made a formidable team, expanding the ranch's breeding program and implementing new techniques that increased productivity. Their first Christmas as a family was a celebration of both old and new traditions. Clara decorated the main house with evergreen boughs and red ribbons, filling the rooms with the scent of pine and spices. Yates and Samuel cut a tall tree from the wooded area at the edge of the property, setting it up in the parlor and decorating it with ornaments Clara had collected over the years, along with simple handmade decorations created by Samuel. On Christmas Eve, after attending the service at the church, they returned home for a special dinner. Afterward, beside the crackling fire, Clara presented Samuel with a hand-sewn quilt made from patches of his mother's and sister's dresses, salvaged from the few belongings they'd brought from Roswell. "So you'll always have a piece of them with you," she explained as Samuel ran his fingers over the familiar fabrics. The boy's eyes filled with tears, but he smiled through them. "Thank you, Clara. I mean, Ma." It was the first time he had called her by that title, and Clara's own eyes grew moist as she embraced him. Later that night, after Samuel had gone to bed with visions of Christmas morning dancing in his head, Yates and Clara sat together before the dying fire. "You've given him such a beautiful gift," Yates said, his arm around his wife's shoulders. "I wanted him to know that we honor his past, even as we build our future," Clara replied. "That's important for all of us, I think." Yates nodded, understanding the deeper meaning in her words. "You know, when I found Samuel, or rather, when he found me, I thought I was saving him. But the truth is, he saved me. He and you both." Clara turned in his arms, studying his face in the firelight. "We saved each other, Yates. That's what family does." As winter gave way to spring, Clara shared news that added even more joy to their household. She was expecting a child. Samuel received the announcement with excitement, immediately assuming the role of protective older brother, even though the baby wouldn't arrive until late summer. "Will it be a boy or a girl?" he asked, helping Clara shell peas on the porch one afternoon. "We won't know until the baby arrives," Clara explained patiently. "I hope it's a boy," Samuel decided. "Then I can teach him to ride and fish and everything." "You could teach a sister those things too," Clara pointed out. Samuel considered this. "I guess so. Ellie was going to learn to fish. Pa promised to teach us both." Clara covered his hand with hers. "Would you like to tell me more about Ellie and your parents? Sometimes sharing memories helps keep them alive in our hearts." So Samuel began to talk, haltingly at first, then with increasing animation, about his little sister's laugh, his mother's songs, his father's strong hands. Clara listened, asking gentle questions, helping the boy to preserve the precious memories that had begun to fade. From the corral where he was working with the horses, Yates observed this interaction, his heart full of love for both of them. The family he'd never thought to have, the life he'd never dared to dream of it, was all unfolding before him like a miraculous gift. Summer arrived with its relentless heat and the constant work of maintaining the ranch. As Clara's pregnancy progressed, she reluctantly reduced her activities, focusing on household management and the ranch accounts rather than the physical labor she usually shared. Yates hired additional hands to compensate, ensuring that the Triple N continued to operate smoothly. In late August, as a thunderstorm rolled across the valley, Clara went into labor. The doctor was summoned from town, and Samuel was sent to stay with the foreman's family. Yates paced the hallway outside their bedroom, each of Clara's cries cutting through him like a knife. After what seemed like an eternity, the doctor emerged, his expression somber. "Mr. Mackenzie, there are complications. The baby is turned wrong. I've done what I can, but—" "Save her," Yates said immediately, his voice hoarse with fear. "Whatever you have to do, save Clara." The doctor nodded grimly and returned to the bedroom. Yates sank to his knees in the hallway, his head bowed in prayer. All the losses of his past rose up to haunt him, his parents, his brother lost in the war, the wife and child who had died of fever while he was still fighting. Would he lose Clara too? And their child? The thought was unbearable. An hour passed, then another. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows, thunder shaking the foundations of the house. Finally, a different cry pierced the air, the unmistakable wail of a newborn. Moments later, the doctor opened the door. His face was tired but no longer grave. "You have a son, Mr. Mackenzie, and your wife, while exhausted, will recover with proper rest and care." Relief flooded through Yates with such force that he had to brace himself against the wall. "Can I see them?" "Briefly," the doctor cautioned. "They both need rest." Yates entered the bedroom with reverent steps. Clara lay propped against pillows, her face pale but radiant, a small bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up as Yates approached, a tired smile illuminating her features. "Meet your son," she whispered. Yates sat carefully on the edge of the bed, gazing in wonder at the tiny, perfect face nestled against Clara's breast. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and when he briefly opened his eyes, Yates saw they were the same clear blue as his own. "He's beautiful," Yates murmured, gently touching the infant's cheek, "just like his mother." "I thought we might name him William," Clara suggested, "after your brother." Tears blurred Yates' vision. His brother Will, lost at Gettysburg, had been the last of his blood family. That Clara would think to honor him this way touched Yates deeply. "William Daniel Mackenzie," he agreed, adding Clara's brother's name. "It's perfect." Clara reached for his hand, squeezing it weakly. "I was afraid," she admitted. "For a while there, I thought." "Don't," Yates said, bringing her hand to his lips. "You're both here. That's all that matters." When Samuel was brought home the next morning, he approached the baby with a mixture of curiosity and awe. "He's so small," he observed, peering into the cradle where William slept. "You were that small once," Clara told him, sitting in a chair nearby, still recovering from the difficult birth. "Can I touch him?" "Very gently," Yates instructed. "Support his head like this." With Yates's guidance, Samuel carefully held his new brother, his expression transforming from uncertainty to pride. "I'll help take care of him," he promised solemnly. "I'll be the best big brother ever." As Clara and Yates exchanged smiles over the boys' heads, they both recognized the healing that had taken place in their unlikely family wounds of the past, soothed by the love of the present and the promise of the future. The years that followed brought both challenges and joys to the Mackenzie family. The Triple N prospered under their joint stewardship, weathering droughts, harsh winters, and fluctuating cattle prices. William grew into a sturdy, curious child, following Samuel around the ranch with unwavering devotion. 2 years after William's birth, Clara gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth Grace, a nod to Samuel's sister Ellie and to the grace that had brought them all together. Samuel, now a teenager, excelled in both his studies and ranch work. Though he still occasionally spoke of his birth family, the pain of loss had transformed into a gentle remembrance. He had found his place in the world, secure in the love of Yates and Clara, proud of his role as the eldest Mackenzie child. On the 5th anniversary of their wedding, Yates surprised Clara by taking her to the spot in the apple orchard where they had shared their first kiss. There, under trees now heavy with fruit, he presented her with a locket containing miniature portraits of their children. "Every day with you is a gift," he told her as she admired the locket. "When I rode into Roswell that day, I never imagined where the path would lead." Clara closed her hand around the locket. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Samuel hadn't approached you? If someone else had helped him bury his family?" Yates considered this. "I believe some things are meant to be, Clara. Perhaps not in the way we expect or plan, but meant all the same. Samuel found me because he needed a father, yes, but also because I needed him, and ultimately because I needed to find my way back to you." Clara leaned into his embrace. "A family born from tragedy, yet filled with so much joy. It's remarkable, isn't it?" "It is," Yates agreed, thinking of all they had built together. "And I'm grateful for every moment." As they walked back toward the house, hand in hand, they could see Samuel showing Elizabeth how to feed an orphaned lamb, while William chased butterflies through the tall grass. The scene embodied everything Yates had once thought lost to him forever: home, family, purpose, love. A decade passed, bringing changes to both the Triple N and the surrounding territory. The railroad came through the nearby town, bringing new opportunities for the ranch and connecting them more closely to distant markets. Samuel, now 21, had completed his education and returned to the Triple N as a full partner in the operation, introducing innovative breeding techniques and modern equipment that increased their productivity. William, at 12, showed a natural talent for working with horses, much like Yates. 10-year-old Elizabeth, bright and determined, divided her time between helping Clara with household management and accompanying Yates and her brothers on ranch business, adamantly refusing to be limited by traditional expectations for young ladies. On a crisp autumn day, as the family gathered for Sunday dinner, Samuel cleared his throat nervously. "I have an announcement," he said, looking around the table at the faces of those he loved. "I've asked Abigail Wilson to marry me, and she said yes." Exclamations of joy and congratulations followed. Abigail, the schoolteacher's daughter, had been a friend to Samuel since that first church social years ago. Their courtship had developed naturally, with the full support of both families. "We'll build a house on the east section," Samuel continued, "close enough to be part of the ranch operations, but with some privacy for our own family." "Your own family," Clara repeated, her eyes misting. "It seems like just yesterday you were that solemn little boy coming to live with us." "The best decision I ever made," Yates added, raising his glass in a toast. "To Samuel and Abigail, and to all the Mackenzies, past, present, and future." After dinner, Yates found Samuel standing on the porch, gazing out at the ranch that had been his home for the past 13 years. Yates joined him, leaning against the railing. "Penny for your thoughts," he offered. Samuel smiled. "I was just thinking about how life turns out. If you hadn't been in Roswell that day—" "But I was," Yates reminded him, "and you were brave enough to ask for help." "I remember being so scared," Samuel admitted. "But there was something about you, something that made me trust you right away." "The feeling was mutual," Yates assured him. "From the moment you took my hand, I knew you were meant to be my son." Samuel turned to face him, his expression earnest. "When Abigail and I have children, I hope I can be the kind of father you've been to me, Yates. Patient, understanding, strong when needed, but gentle too." Yates felt his throat tighten with emotion. "You will be," he said with confidence. "You've learned from both the fathers. You've had the one who gave you life and the one who helped you build it." Samuel nodded, acknowledging the truth in this. "I still think about them sometimes, my birth parents and Ellie, but it doesn't hurt the way it used to." Now it's just part of who I am. As it should be, Yates said, placing a hand on Samuel's shoulder. They'll always be part of you, just as you'll always be part of Clara and me, no matter where life takes you. Samuel's wedding the following spring was a community celebration, bringing together friends, neighbors, and business associates from across the territory. As Yates watched Samuel and his bride exchange vows, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them all to this moment, a journey that began with a simple, heartbreaking request from an orphaned boy. That evening, as the wedding festivities continued around them, Yates found Clara standing at the edge of the celebration, watching their children with a contented smile. William was attempting to teach Elizabeth to dance, both of them laughing at their missteps, while Samuel and Abigail moved gracefully among their well-wishers. "Happy?" Yates asked, slipping his arm around Clara's waist. "Completely," she answered, leaning into him. "Our family's growing again." "So it is," Yates agreed, "though I expect we'll be grandparents before too long, adding yet another generation to the Triple N." "Grandparents?" Clara marveled. "How did that happen so quickly?" Yates chuckled. "One day at a time, my love. Just one day at a time." As the music changed to a familiar waltz, Yates extended his hand to his wife. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Mackenzie?" Clara placed her hand in his, her green eyes sparkling in the lantern light. "Always, Mr. Mackenzie. Always." They moved onto the dance floor, surrounded by the family they had built together, a family formed not by blood alone, but by choice, by commitment, by love that had transformed grief into joy and strangers into the closest of kin. And as they danced beneath the star-filled New Mexico sky, Yates Mackenzie knew with absolute certainty that the greatest journey of his life had begun that fateful day when a small, brave boy had tugged at his sleeve and asked a simple question that changed everything. "Sir, can you bury my sister?" The answer had led him home. The years continued to flow by, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of family life. Samuel and Abigail welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Rose, followed 2 years later by twin boys who kept the entire household on their toes. William completed his education and, like his older brother, returned to the Triple N, specializing in expanding their horse breeding program. Elizabeth, defying convention, attended college in Denver, returning with both a degree in business and a determination to help the Triple N adapt to the changing times. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the world around them transformed. Automobiles began to appear alongside horses on the streets of town. Telephones connected the ranch to distant markets. The Triple N expanded, acquiring neighboring properties when opportunities arose, diversifying into crops as well as cattle. Through it all, the foundation remained the same, the family that Yates and Clara had built, bound together by love that transcended blood and circumstances. On a warm summer evening in 1906, 30 years after Yates had first encountered a grieving boy in Roswell, the extended Mackenzie family gathered on the sprawling porch of the main house to celebrate Yates and Clara's anniversary. 4 generations were present, from Clara's aging brother Daniel to Samuel's newest grandchild, just 3 months old. After dinner, as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Samuel raised his glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," he said, his voice carrying across the assembled family. "To Yates and Clara, who taught all of us the true meaning of family, who showed us that love isn't limited by blood or birth, but by the choices we make and the commitments we keep." "To Yates and Clara," echoed around the porch, followed by the clinking of glasses. Later, as the younger children played on the lawn and the adults conversed in small groups, Yates found himself sitting beside Samuel on the steps, just as they had so many years ago. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" Samuel asked quietly. "If you hadn't stopped in Roswell that day?" Yates considered the question. I used to wonder about it," he admitted. "But I've come to believe that some things are meant to be, Samuel. Not predestined exactly, but guided, as if all the losses and wrong turns in our lives are sometimes preparing us for the moment when we can truly make a difference. Samuel nodded thoughtfully. I've come to believe that too. My first family's tragedy was devastating, but it led me to you and Clara, to this life that I love. He glanced across the lawn to where Abigail was helping one of their granddaughters pick flowers. To all of this. No regrets then? Yates asked. Not a single one, Samuel assured him. How could I regret anything that brought us here? As twilight deepened into night, the family moved inside, but Yates and Clara remained on the porch, sitting close together in the swing that had been their favorite spot for decades. 30 years, Clara mused, her head resting against Yates's shoulder. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you rode onto the Triple N with Samuel beside you. And sometimes it feels like you've always been here, like my life didn't truly begin until you returned. Yates pressed a kiss to her temple, now streaked with silver. I feel the same way. Everything before was just preparation. Learning the lessons I would need to be the husband and father our family deserved. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, distant cattle lowing, the whisper of wind through the cottonwoods, the occasional hoot of an owl. I was thinking, Clara said eventually, about what Samuel said in his toast. About family being defined by choices rather than blood. He's right, Yates agreed, though I'd add that it's defined by love more than anything else. Clara nodded against his shoulder. Love that heals, love that builds, love that transforms tragedy into blessing. She lifted her head to meet his gaze. That's what you did for Samuel, Yates, what we did together. What he did for me as well, Yates added. That boy saved my soul, Clara. And then you saved my heart. Clara's eyes shimmered in the moonlight. We saved each other, all of us. As they sat together under the vast New Mexico sky, surrounded by the legacy they had built from the most unlikely beginning, Yates Mackenzie reflected on the journey of his life. From the battlefields of the Civil War to the moment when a small, grief-stricken boy had asked him for help. Through all the joy and challenges of building a family and a future, it had been a path he could never have imagined, yet one that had led him exactly where he was meant to be. I love you, Clara Nolan Mackenzie, he said softly. Today and always. And I love you, Yates Mackenzie, she replied. Today and always. In that moment, as throughout their life together, they both understood the profound truth that had shaped their family. That sometimes the deepest bonds are formed not in the circumstances of our beginning, but in the choices we make along the way. That family can be found in the most unexpected places. And that love, when freely given and faithfully kept, has the power to heal even the most broken hearts and to create something beautiful from the fragments of loss. For Yates, who had once believed that everything good could be stripped away in an instant, this was the greatest lesson of all that love endures. That family endures. That the legacy we build through our choices and commitments can transcend tragedy and transform lives for generations to come. And it had all begun with a simple, heartbreaking question from a brave little boy. Sir, can you bury my sister? The answer had created not just a family, but a home for all of them, a place of belonging, of healing, of love that would continue long after they were gone, carried forward in the hearts and lives of all who called themselves Mackenzie. As the stars wheeled overhead and the ranch settled into night, Yates and Clara sat together, grateful for the path that had brought them here, and for all the days past, present, and future that they had shared and would share in the home they had built together.